Pope Leo has warned of the dangers of artificial intelligence and has called for an ethical code for its use in the first encyclical of his papacy. The encyclical document is a letter written by the Pope to a particular audience of bishops. Pope Leo urged world and industry leaders to slow down their development of AI, warning misinformation could lead humanity down the path of unending war. He's also offered a personal apology for the Catholic Church's historic role in supporting transatlantic slavery.
Artificial intelligence already touches many areas of our lives and affects decisions that shape human coexistence. But when technology weakens our critical sense, peace itself is at risk. Disarming, however, is not enough. We must build. Let us learn to listen to one another, face the present challenges with courage, and cooperate in building a more human and fraternal society.
Well, let's get more analysis on what Pope Leo had to say. I'm joined by host of the ABC's Religion and Ethics Report, Andrew West. Andrew, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
What message was Pope Leo trying to impart there as he stood alongside the co-founder of AI company Anthropic?
I think, Gemma, this is probably one of the most profound documents that you'll see coming out of this papacy. It's certainly one of the most profound documents of the last 50 years because it addresses an issue that touches us all. There are two principal points here. First of all, that AI can be used for good, maybe not a lot of good, but it can be used for good, but it must never be in the hands of a small group of people. This is a real challenge to the so-called tech bros and their political enablers. So technology, AI should never be in a stranglehold by the super wealthy. We're talking people now on the cusp of becoming trillionaires, partly through tech and AI. He sees that concentration of power as evil as the concentration of wealth, which is in itself an enormous sin. So that's the first message. The second one is a repudiation to the warmongers, because this document specifically repudiates a popular perception of the idea of a just war. Now, he doesn't name J.D. Vance or Pete Hegseth or President Trump in this document, but it's very clear, Gemma, that those who have been using the idea of a just war to justify the situation in Iran, but it would also apply, by the way, to Putin in Russia, they are wrong, they are mistaken, because he says technology has totally changed the contours of war. AI has totally changed the way that war can be fought. So those are, to me, the two big things, the two big takeouts of this monumentally important document.
And if we zoom out for just a moment for some background, I mean, this was Pope Leo's first encyclical. What exactly is it? How important? You know, what other subjects have been conquered in these in the past?
Well, I think the best precedent for this is Pope Leo XIII, 135 years ago, with his document Rerum Novarum, of new things. Now, that document was written in the tempest of the Industrial Revolution, Gemma. That document was written when industrialisation was displacing communities. It was taking over old, beautiful craft industries. Pope Leo XIII argued for the primacy, these were the words of the document, the primacy of labour over capital. So that is a perfect precedent 135 years later. When he took the name Leo XIV, the current Pope was very aware of the precedent. He was also very aware of the new Industrial Revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution that we're now in. And I think from the earliest days of his papacy, he made it very clear that this would be a principal concern of his. Because when you think about what it does to small communities, when you think about what AI, the potential AI, does to the environment, this document, by the way, points out that many of the resources used to power AI in the way that they're extracted will threaten communities, will threaten the natural environment, will threaten, as Pope Leo says, the created order. So this document ranges across not just the obscenity of a tiny group of people concentrating a tiny amount, a vast amount of power and a vast amount of wealth, but it also asks us to consider the global impacts, the environmental impacts of AI choices.
How might Anthropic have shaped the Pope's perspective here?
Well, I think Anthropic, let's be fair. Let's say that Chris Olah is being very sincere, because what he said was that AI cannot be left to people like me. It cannot be left to people who understand algorithms and programming and codes. In AI, in the development of all technology, there must always be an ethical element to it, and that requires people whose skills, whose thinking goes way beyond numbers. Not that numbers and mathematics and pure mathematics aren't important, but Chris Olah says we cannot be trusted as an industry to regulate ourselves. That is a major admission. Now, does he get something by standing beside Pope Francis, standing beside Pope Leo? Yes, of course he does. There is the reflected glory of this Pope speaking authoritatively about the ethical choices. So yes, there's a little bit of reflected glory there, but for someone like Chris Olah, and let's take him at his word, let's take him at his most sincere, it also puts him on notice. It binds him, and by extension, it maybe binds other tech entrepreneurs into these kinds of ethical considerations. Remember the other thing that Leo talks about here. This is in a way a reflection of almost pre-Christian values about the true, the good and the beautiful. Pope Leo says that truth, very, very important. How can truth be corrupted by AI? He specifically says this is a challenge for political leaders, that political statements can effectively be concocted out of nothing. AI can displace truth. So these are even broader considerations of this document.
And Pope Leo apologised for the Church's historic role in slavery. What did he have to say about that?
He essentially said that the Church had been very slow to condemn slavery. It did not come until late in the 19th century. And he asked a very humble pardon on the part of the Church. But he also put it in another context as well. He put it in the context of a new colonialism, a new slavery. Remember that AI can wipe all before it, all local cultures, all local customs. It has this monstrous potential. So he is putting the context of the Church's failure to denounce slavery sufficiently and in a timely way. He's also putting it in a new context. There's also a very practical thing here too, that many of the workers whose labour will be used to extract the sort of rare earth minerals that AI will rely upon may themselves be grossly exploited. We see it in a much lighter way, but it is still present when we use Deliveroo services or Uber services. There's an exploitation there that governments have scrambled to keep up with. So these are all things to do with the way that AI displaces and upsets the dignity of the person. One final point I'd make. He says this, and it is so beautiful. He says the problem with AI is that every day it asks each of us to justify our worth as humanity. It asks each of us to justify our worth in terms of what do we contribute to the economy or to the technology. That is not, from his perspective, what God intended. God imbued all people with an innate dignity. That is what Leo is saying.